Welcome to the Secure Connections podcast, brought to you by IOTA, the Internet of Things Security Services Association. I'm Brian Sherman, Content Director for IOTA, and joining me for today's episode is Tyler Moffitt, Senior Threat Research Analyst at Webroot. His job involves getting deeply immersed within the world of malware and cryptocurrencies, improving the Webroot experience for channel partners and reviewing intelligence, as well as a lot of other responsibilities too. In today's podcast, we'll be talking about the escalating threat landscape, which is a never-ending topic, obviously, for us. So welcome back to the Secure Connections podcast, Tyler.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Good. Hey, it's been a while since you last joined us, at least individually on a podcast. What have you been up to the past couple of months? What's life for you like during present times?
Yeah, I think last time we did a podcast together, Brian, I was back in the office. So yeah, been at home with the kids and everybody in my basement. Basically, everything's all virtual now. So virtual conferences, webinars, you name it, those have all been ramping up. No more flying, traveling, going to any place and speaking at any live events or doing Booth 30, all virtual for me. But yeah, COVID landscape. We just released Nastiest malware. That's one big thing. We big giant marketing campaign we did where we showcase the nastiest malware of 2020, and that's been going really well as well.
Oh, good. We're going to want to talk about that today.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So you're hunkered down in the basement. Do you have kids in school?
Yes, I do. They're currently hybrid mode. A couple days there, a couple days back. However, they just announced that one kid got COVID, and so we're on high alert. If two people in the school get COVID, everybody comes back to home learning. So I'm not too optimistic there. I do feel that will escalate, but it is what it is. Currently, the kids are at school today, so we're going to enjoy it as long as we can.
Yeah, I have a lot of sympathy for the parents, you parents out there that are going back and forth. And I think it's even the schedule's got to be difficult for you too, because you never know when, at least you have the ability you're working from home, but where you've got parents that are working out, I don't know how you figure out schedules right now.
It's definitely difficult for sure. Like I think, 4 or 5 months ago when it was before summer, and everybody was figuring out everybody was mandatory home, and I have a 5 and 7-year-old, so you really do have to teach them the concepts. I remember like juggling webinars and in between webinars teaching my kid what to color, what these sounds make. It's definitely difficult while my wife's working at a bakery doing deliveries. But it's all we've sort of figured out a pattern and a schedule and a procedure, if you will, to where it's all pretty smooth and streamlined now. I think we could handle it even if we are forced to go more lockdown, which I hope doesn't happen, but we're prepared if so.
Hey, the good thing is kids are resilient, especially.
I know.
That's awesome. But so we can add the job description of teacher onto you, or at least part-time teacher as well. I know that's the fun part. But
yeah, definitely.
Well, great. Now, and you mentioned up front, there's a lot of the malware issues in that, but the threat trifecta is approaching. Actually, if it isn't already here, between the pandemic, the election season, which will, who knows how long that'll technically continue, and the upcoming holiday season, cyber criminals have to be excited about all the great phishing and malware opportunities that are out there.
Absolutely.
What are the potential threats that most concern you?
Honestly, they're getting better and better with the phishing lures. Okay, like I know we talk about phishing forever. Phishing's been around for 20 years. Mostly, what happens is people are falling for a phishing. It has like a word or document that has a macro. Right, this is probably the most common way people ultimately fall for end result ransomware. It usually, I don't know if you know this, but when you're hit with ransomware or something like this, it's not just one guy or one group of guys that are hitting you. It's actually multiple different people that are contracted and sort of pulled together. So initially is the email lure, right? The mal spam. So 82% of all malicious internet traffic is just malicious spam campaigns. That's basically emails being sent to you that you're to get tricked to click on. And so with COVID, it's all about the landscape, all about COVID. Probably the most common ones we've seen are CDC best guidelines to stay safe, not get coronavirus, right? Second ones, we've seen updated lists of people who have coronavirus in your city, so you can take a look on a map and try and avoid them, which is just silly from a privacy standpoint or even the logistics if they had it, but people still fall for it, right? And then the third one is the stimulus. We saw a huge influx of that before the first stimulus, and we're seeing some now trying to project for this second stimulus. Basically saying, fill out this form, interact with the form. You have to click enable content to interact, but yeah, it's all a scam. In the Word document, they want you to click enable content and sort of trick yourself into infecting yourself. And I think that's probably the biggest issue, is they're getting so good now. I've seen some recently. There was one for a Canadian university where it said it was a COVID-19 survey on how well the university is doing with COVID-19. And it said, in order to interact with the document, you have to enable content, enable editing, which is the trick, the scam. But I was like, I can't really imagine. I would imagine that more than half, if not more than 3/4 of the population would fall for that and click it. And it's really good. They've done a really good job. Not to give our authors credit, but they're getting so good that they're just so effective at starting that attack chain. Because like I said, then it results into a secondary payload, which will, analyze the environment, move laterally throughout the network, case the joint, if you will, decide who they've breached. Is it individual person? Is it an environment with multiple employees? What kind of data do they have? How much is that data worth? And then from there, they decide how much, and then they drop a ransomware payload. But they have so much options now. Everything has changed. That's basically it. Rant end.
Kind of sounds like a channel program that they've got working full steam, along with marketing and sales and everything that goes with it. That's frightening, I guess, at that point, how well they've gotten at collaborating.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. The Emotet is our #1 nastiest malware because it's the most contracted botnet. Literally, whatever ransomware you're getting, whether you're getting Ryuk or Doppelpaymer or Bitpaymer or Conti, they all have basically at some point or another contracted Emotet to be the initial, make it into the inbox, right? And they've done definitely their own campaigns and tried to do inbox, but I'm not going to lie, Emotet is just the most highly contracted. They're the most effective, and they technically don't even deliver a ransomware payload to anybody. They don't even, if they just make it into the inbox, that's their job.
Yeah, interesting. And I know that you mentioned a couple of different schemes, but I'm thinking right now with people at a heightened state of emergency in literally every part of their life right now. Like, for example, you've got kids at home. I'm imagining the parents are getting a lot of emails coming in. I mean, how easy would that be to spoof? Give them updates. Everything is going via digital communications right now. It seems like that would really heighten the opportunities for
absolutely. And the landscape's changed for COVID as well. Like, everything's related to COVID. When you get an email, whether it's from the school district or from whatever, even just general promotional emails, people are putting COVID in there, right? So it makes sense that all the emails people are getting are around COVID and they click on it. So landscape's, it's working for them.
Well, the other part I mentioned too was the holiday season's approaching. That's typically been one of the biggest phishing and malware times of the year. What do you project for this year, along with all the other things that we're seeing?
It's a little different this year. I mean, you have to realize, a lot of the we're not going to have doorbuster Black Fridays. It's all going to be online, right? All these deals now are trying not to promote people rushing to stores to go buy stuff. All of these doorbusters, for the most part that I've seen, have been at this X time and date, it will go on sale on the website, right? And so then now you have people that are strictly relying on the computer to get these good deals. And so, yeah, absolutely. During the Christmas season, you're going to see tons and tons of issues. So one thing I recommend doing, fakespot. If you've not heard of that, there's an add-on you can add on to your browser, Chrome, Firefox, whatever. It's called fakespot. What it will do is, when you're on Amazon or whatever shopping webpage, something will come up and tell you, it will grade the reviews. It will literally analyze, using machine learning, artificial intelligence, all the reviews of that item and see if there's any deception there, right? Any that are taken out or changed or fake, and it will sort of grade it for you and to let you know, is this 4.5-star thing on Amazon really 4.5 stars? And you'll find that a lot of items, especially from China, this is my secondary point, that are pushed on Amazon aren't actually really 4.5-star items at all, and they'll have a fake spot grade of F. And you have to realize too, another thing that people do when they're buying stuff online during the holidays for whatever Christmas thing, is people who want IoT devices, whether it's like a Nest thermostat, or doorbells, smart thermostats. There's so many different things, smart refrigerators, whatever. There's so many different devices people are bringing into their house. Just watch out for buying. So a lot of the times people have an item they want to buy. There's an expensive, really popular version, usually by Google or Amazon or whoever, that costs more money than, let's say, one that a Chinese one is offering that's sort of a knockoff that has the same functionality or features as far as whatever, but the security is not in there. The security is not built into it, which is why it's less expensive. There's some big problems with this because a lot of these China IoT devices that you buy, smart thermostats, smart doorbells, whatever, that costs a lot less, they may have hard-coded passwords or no security in mind where they're not encrypting the traffic and all your data is in plain text over the air. These are big problems. Or some of these devices, they're created with like, minimum viability, maximum profitability. It's where it's just get it working, get it out the door, and sell as many as possible. And the company may not even be around for a year or two to even provide any security patches or updates if people find a way to exploit it using some, nation state attack that becomes disclosed later, that worked on X amount of devices that use this chip or whatever, and all you need to do is do an update, but they won't create one for you because they've gone out of business and you're still using it. Things like that. Also, charities. I cannot tell you how many times you'll find fake charities offering right now. There's plenty of places you can Google your charities, make sure that your donations are going to reputable charities where the ratio is pretty good on where it's going to the people you actually wish to donate to, and then it's not just going to salaries of the people there. Additionally, also super good deals. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen advertisements on fake websites that will just take your money advertising $25 Ray-Bans that are real, right? A lot of these times what they'll do is they'll take your money and send you a cheap knockoff that's very clearly not Ray-Bans, or they'll take your money and not send you anything. If something's offering the price that's like 1/10 or 1/20th or the price of what it is retail, it's not real. Don't believe it. Don't think, oh wow, I just stumbled across this fantastic deal. They've only got 5 left. No, they're going to take your money. I could keep going, but these are the things you want to watch out for.
So Tyler, already you've given me so many different ways that basically cyber criminals can scam end users. What advice do you provide for MSPs to help guide them through this right now?
So MSPs specifically, if you're talking about their clients are trying to avoid this,
to guide their clients through it. And
education, top layer is education, right? The very, very first step is making sure your users know what not to click on, and that starts really with just core education, not just necessarily training as far as like education courses, which I still absolutely recommend. But a lot of the times, depending on your solution or what you have going, hopefully you have one, the training can be boring. I'm not going to lie. We've partnered with Ninjiho to revamp ours. So they're basically 2-minute long action cartoons, which are really engaging and help people learn. Beyond training courses, though, my favorite, phishing simulation. The real way to test people is, to give them a real world scenario. Obviously, you're not going to send them a real phishing link and steal all their info, but to do a phishing simulation is really, really important because you're going to find out who in your organization is falling for it. Because we find that if you do a phishing simulation just every once in a while, every few months or whatever, you're going to find that around almost 28% of employees will click on and enter their information, which is pretty crazy, right? That many people. But we found that if you increase the phishing simulation campaigns to at least once a month, you're sending it out to everybody, you can reduce that by 70% to 8.5% of employees. So you're never going to get that down to zero, and there's nobody who will ever get that down to zero. You're always going to have those employees, but it's also good to find out if you do reduce it down to that 8.5%, maybe you can retarget those repeat offenders and keep ingrain it into them. Hey, look, this is fake. Don't click on it. And if they keep falling for it every single time, then in a real world scenario, they're going to be handing over their credentials. So maybe you want to reevaluate what permissions and access that person have, so they're not giving away the keys to the kingdom. Things like that.
Now, I know we've a fair amount of the channel, and I've talked to MSPs every day, are implementing the end user training with their clients, and
it's getting popular and popular for sure.
Right, it's growing in popularity, but how prevalent do you think it is that MSPs are actually getting involved in doing, like you said, the monthly phishing themselves? Are they going back in and doing that regularly?
It's another thing. I don't have the data on that, but I can tell you right now, it is very as important as you consider endpoint security or antivirus on the machine should be just as important. for you to have training. It's not a secondary fee, like it's not something that holds a back seat. It is just as important. And when you think about a layered solution on what you're protecting, the first stop on people being infected, like 95% of all breaches result in a human error. That is the very, very top, right? So it's like adding layer on top of layer. So if you have users who going to fall for something, they failed the first check. Next check is what? URL IP. They clicked on a phishing web page or a malware link trying to connect to a command and control server trying to issue a malicious payload. Then you could have URL and IP protection. Stop it right there. About 99% effectiveness, right? And then from there you have endpoint protection, which is it's actually being downloaded and written to disk. So there's so many different chances to catch that threat. It's just sort of layer on top of layer. Now, no one layer is going to be 100%, but it's combining those layers together to get you as close to 100% effectiveness. And so training is at the very, very top. So it's very, very important.
Yeah, that's one thing, even with my kids, I always talk to them about, if they're getting emails and things look, to your point, too good to be true, is don't click on the links, go to the actual website, check it out.
That's a good point.
It's little things like that.
The gift cards. I'm glad I wanted to mention that. That's another email lure we're going to see for the holiday season. Right. Free Amazon, Walmart, Target gift cards. Why would you be getting one? There's no reason.
People love me. Stuff. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. And even then I would imagine that marginally, even if it just looks good, it doesn't have to be fantastic. But yeah, I just go with the zero trust when it comes to email anymore.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's hard for people to do. It's like we've grown accustomed to being remote work. More people have been in the last 8 months remote workers.
Yep.
And sometimes it's just easier to go that route. And those human kind of tendencies are hard to overcome.
Absolutely. No, for sure. You got some things you just keep of, like, if someone really wanted to give you a gift card, say, hey, thanks for your work today. You did a good job on this project. Thanks for getting this in on time. I don't know. They're going to send you a Amazon gift card, not through a link. It'll be like an actual code in the email, right? You're not going to have to download a Word doc and click enable content and editing to get that. That's a scam. Don't fall for it. Just remember, honestly, biggest thing for most people, disable macros. Most of your employees don't even need to use macros. I understand some will need to use it, maybe in finance or sales or something like that. Some Excel words, workbooks, but as far as the majority of employees don't ever need to run macros, just disable it. Unfortunately, the defaults of Microsoft Office Suite allows people to infect themselves by clicking the button. So what I recommend you do is go into the Trust Center. So File, Options, Trust Center, Macro Settings, disable macros, don't show button. And that's all you got to do. And you can do it through the registry, through group policy. You can do it individually for each user. It's pretty easy to do.
Excellent advice. We can't even count on bad English anymore is the problem.
No, they're getting really good.
I look at some of the stuff and I want to hire these people to help me write. Yeah, it's getting bad. It's not perfect. There are still some out there, but
sure. I mean, we have to realize Word is getting better. I mean, I'm typing in Word now and it'll help me with like syntax versus just grammar and like how to type things correctly. And so absolutely, I would, it's only going to get better and better for them, even if their skills in English aren't getting better and better because Microsoft Office Suite is helping them.
So things like Grammarly are actually not helping us when it comes to cybercrime right now. Yeah. Now you had mentioned earlier the nastiest malware in circulation right
yes.
now. Go into that a little bit for you. What should
Sure. So every year we do, it's around the Halloween time. So this debuted like October 30th, Halloween time. We released this, and it's sort of nastiest malware, like the most destructive or effective malware of the year at that point, right? And it's something we do, and we have cool little icons and assets and images. You can Google it, nastiest malware 2020. It's Webroot is the only one that does it. We've been doing it for a few years now, but basically what we do is we sort of give you our top lists of what we feel is the most impactful, nastiest malware right now going around. And so most of the malware in here are going to be info stealer and Trojans, botnets, and ransomware, right? And most of these guys are all related. They usually contract each other. The end result of usually a lot of these info stealers, their job is to create persistence in the network, move laterally, infect as many machines as possible, dump credentials to eventually get domain level credentials, and then lead off with ransomware, but you have to realize the ransomware payload is not doing that all itself. The ransomware payload is just encrypting the files, right? The info stealer, Trojan is just creating persistent move laterally throughout the network and trying to create a foothold in the environment. And then the botnet is the one sending the email campaign that initially gets the initial infection. And so they work together like a 3-stage payload, if you will. Sometimes it's 4 stages. It depends what they're doing. But for the most part, in as simplistic way as I can talk about, you have botnet for the email phishing making it to the inbox, the secondary stage payload, which creates persistence and a foothold in the network to sort of case the joint, analyze how much money can be charged, and then the final ransomware payload that will encrypt the files and require the ransom payment. And usually 3 different groups of people working together, and all successful ransoms, they sort of split or profit share between them. But we have, I believe, how many did we get this? 10. We did 10 this year. We have Emotet, Conti Ryuk, Sodanakibi Revel, Crisis Dharma Phobos, all the same dudes, Maze Ransomware, BitPaymer, Doppelpaymer, TrickBot, Drydex, Valak, CACBot. These are all the botnets and info stealers, IceID, and Ursnif. Maybe you've heard some of those, maybe you haven't heard some of those, but if you ever want to learn any more of those, we have this asset marketing campaign created where we have blogs, webinars, tons of things going out about it. So if you want to read about it, you certainly can. If you want to hear about it, I'll be presenting it on many different webinars, and you can look those up on our website as well. But yeah, we sort of go in and showcase all of them. One thing to note, the Maze ransomware that we covered, not a week after we released this list, they shut down operations. Now that's something that they do pretty regularly. Grand Crab did it. They turned into Sodanakibi and then turned into Revel. So when a lot of these ransomware payloads gain notoriety and gain popularity, and people looking around asking about it, have you heard of this, have you seen this, they usually then quit operations so no one's sniffing around, and then they come back, they rebrand, if you will. So we might see an Xfinity ransomware, or the change of names, if you will. We'll see what they come back as, but I fully expect they are not done, and they are just trying to lose the tail, and if you will.
They go in stealth mode and disappear for a while and then reinvent themselves, right?
They go on vacation, spend some money, and then they come back when they realize they want more.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic information. And yeah, I would encourage everybody to go check it out at the Webroot website, and especially your blogs on that. You guys have some fantastic resources on that side, Tyler. In the tech industry, we're notorious, I think, for providing too much information to non-tech people. How much, you've obviously got a lot of depth and things as far as cybersecurity threats. How much depth should MSPs really be getting into when they're talking about all of these various types of malware? Is it good enough to just kind of say, hey, look, here's a list of just like the top 10. It's like the FBI's most wanted list. This is just some of the things that could threaten you, and then get into the discussion on prevention? Or do you see a lot of them go more in depth? Does it depend on the audience you're working with too?
It does depend on the audience, but for the most part, showcasing the top threats is a good idea, because on how you prevent against those top threats is going to be effectively how you protect against the ones that are not in the top 10. So yes, you could definitely go into detail talking about each different one and how they are technically different. But for the most part, a lot of these are starting with email lures with COVID, relying on the macro, click the button, or RDP breaches. That's another thing we haven't talked about. This is really, really important. Make sure that you're not using the default Microsoft RDP, because you're open on TCP ports, and all they need is your username and password for the actual machine. Most people feel that they have great usernames and passwords. It's proven time and time again they don't. Doesn't matter even if you are the unicorn with a great username and password. They're going to brute force it, because secondary defaults with the Microsoft is unlimited number of login attempts. No lockout, no alert, nobody notified. So they're just going to brute force it. And that's where we have a big problem, because since the pandemic has come, everybody's working from home. We've seen a 41% increase in the number of unsecure RDP breaches. The most amount, that I think it's like 7 or 8 million devices now we could all brute force right now if we wanted to and get desktop access to. It's the most amount of machines ever using unsecure RDP, and I get why it's happening. Workforces are changing to allow their workforce to work remotely. They're just not doing it securely because they don't know how. There's a lot of things you got to keep abreast of, but that's another big one for sure.
Yeah, so many things to be aware of. So let's look ahead now. I know we've talked about the current situation connection, but how do you see the landscape evolving in the coming months? I know there's so much uncertainty. It's hard to predict what comes tomorrow, let alone what comes next quarter and 6 months. But what are your thoughts about the future?
Yeah, so I think here's the thing. Now, I know my history, background in crypto. We are going to be entering a crypto bull run again, similar to 2017. I cannot speculate on prices. I am not a financial advisor. However, criminals will be stacking as much crypto as they possibly can. And this is going to happen with, we're seeing a lot, especially too, on a lot of servers and things, crypto mining payloads that will specifically just mine cryptocurrency. There is no ransomware. The great thing about this is for criminals is there's no ransomware payload. This is a way to monetize instantly. It does not require consent or any request or answer from the victim. They don't have to pay a ransom. All they have to do is just be ignorant to the fact that a crypto mining payload is on the machine using their CPU cycles to mine cryptocurrency for them. And the criminals, it's 100% profitable because the criminal is not paying for the power bill, and it's on the user, right? So we're likely going to see that grow. When crypto prices increase, we see these attacks come out of the woodwork. They can mine cryptocurrency on your machine. They can mine cryptocurrency in your browser, depending on what they've done to the website you're going after. It's called crypto jacking. Very, very, very big. 2017, 2018, pretty much like fell out of existence as soon as we saw Bitcoin dive. Right. But we may see that increase to where that sort of attack increases. Also, with just ransomware landscape, breaches, the what's it called, extortion game that they're playing now. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much mainstream now. All the big malware ransomware campaigns are doing this extortion thing where when they're casing the joint and deciding how much money their data is worth to ransom, right? They're taking some of it. They're taking key pieces of it, usually as much as they can that's customer or internal employee information, like anything they can as far as like customer information that would violate GDPR or CCPA. And they want to do that so that way, if in the event you decide not to pay for the ransom because you've got good backups or you're able to make do with the loss and you can just re-image and be like, I'm not going to pay. They're going to be like, okay, if you don't want to pay because you don't need to, you can get everything back up and going. We're just going to release this data for everyone to have. So you've publicly now been breached and damaged to brand, reputation, all that stuff that comes with it, along with if you don't now disclose to GDPR or CCPA of this breach, and they find out through a breach website like on the dark web, then they're going to come to you and they're going to have fines for you. Because a lot of people like to just sweep it under the rug. If they're not going to pay the ransom, or even if they do pay the ransom, they just want to sweep it under the rug. And if you choose not to pay the ransom and they find out and you never reported because you tried to sweep it under the rug, they're going to have fines for you, and it's not cheap. It's like $50 per customer per record. So like one customer, 100 different transactions, or 100 different customers, one transaction each scenario is a 50 grand fine. So it's pretty nasty there as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've been talking about generalities as far as the threats, but what best practices should MSPs be doubling down on right now, looking 2021 and beyond, to safeguard their own businesses as well as their clients right now?
Absolutely. Cyber resiliency, like good cybersecurity posture is the best thing. So realizing, like, honestly, the best security posture you can have is considering not if you'll be infected, but when you'll be infected. Now, I know as a security vendor, you're probably like, why are you saying that? Well, no, that's literally how you want to have it. Obviously, we do a fantastic job, but nobody's 100%, right? And so what you want to conduct yourself in literally every single day, considering, all right, when are we getting infected today? And hopefully you don't. But if you have that mentality, you're going to put safeguards in place. You're going to make sure training is very, very, very important, that you've got multi-layered solutions that aren't just an endpoint agent. Maybe you've got something for URL and IP. Maybe you've got something for scripts and macros and things like that, right? And then at the very bottom of your list, you should also have a reliable backup solution where you have all the files that you would possibly need to restore in the event that you're hit. And you also go through the process, like you just pretend one day we're going to do a fire drill. Let's pretend we don't have access to any of our data. Everything was locked. Can we restore everything and bounce back with minimal productivity loss? These are very, very important things that you need to be doing, because in the event of DEFCON 5 scenario happens, you have practice and know what to do in this scenario.
So yeah, the worst case scenarios, I don't know that you see it implemented a lot. I've talked to some MSPs that honestly get so busy that those are the things that get overlooked. But I think since the pandemic, Essentially, I've seen them doing it more because of also their own remote work situation.
Right.
Their employees is tightening down the security and maybe going back in and doing more testing.
Yeah, it's definitely very important.
Very good. So as an industry analyst, I know you spend a lot of time digging through, the current threats, potential threats, prioritizing risks. How can MSPs leverage your insight and knowledge?
Sorry, so what do you mean, like, as far as what I have to talk about?
I know you've got a lot of insight. How can
Sure.
how can they kind of tap into your brain? I know you've got blogs and some other.
Oh, right. Yeah, absolutely. Blogs, webinars. I like going to be doing end of year ones as well, where we summarize. Those are all fantastic. But honestly, some of the easiest ways are we have training courses. Like, we have training courses not just for the individual, like, employee, like, don't click on this macro, this button. We also have training for the IT admin, right? Best practices, what you can do to secure your environment, where we have things like disable what you're not using, talking about macros, PowerShell, JavaScript, HTA, VBA scripts, all these things that are very powerful that criminals love to sneak malware into an environment that really no one ever uses in the environment, other than maybe IT admins using PowerShell to push updates for things in the environment. But yeah, that's very, 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 very important. But we also, training also on our actual endpoint, how to use it best, how to set it up correctly, what group policies we recommend. We have like a myriad of suggestions that we recommend to best secure and have the best security posture. And it's all in training courses. Now, I can't go through all right now, but yeah, we have training courses, not just for the individual user on the basic, like 101, what not to click, but also for the IT admin on how to fine tune your environment, group policies, settings, and global site management console. If you use our endpoint, what's tweaks and things to have there, all that type of stuff. Very, very important. And that's not just us. There are other, providers out there. I'm sure, like the ConnectWise, the Continuum, the Kaseya, the Ninja, all these RMMs. Some of them are also introducing best practices for the IT admins and how they can best secure the environment as well. So it's not just on our end. Everybody else is really there. It's growing. That buy stocks in that for sure, because everybody is doing that now, because they're realizing that education, not just for the individual but also the IT admin, is very important, because the landscape is constantly changing. How do you keep abreast of all these new tips and tricks and tactics that criminals are leveraging? Right? It's a cat and mouse game. Even with us, we're constantly improving our product. That's why we introduced the new evasion shield, which stops against macros and PowerShell and all these other different types of tricks that criminals use to sneak malware into systems. We have to constantly adapt to the cat and mouse game, if you will, and you should as well. But training is important, not just for the individual, IT admin. Hopefully that answers it.
Yeah. No, I think information is a huge value right now to MSPs, to end users. Getting the right information is always the hardest part. You can drink from a fire hose, or you can go right to the source for the information that you need. But no, I will maybe we'll have you back soon to talk about AI and some of the automation things that are going on too, because I know we could do a deeper dive and
oh, sure. Yeah. Sci-fi has a big public misconception, right? We don't have robots with human-like brain, equal-like intelligence walking around the office advising our executives yet. It's really important, really useful, but we're not there yet. C3PO and R2D2 are coming, but they're not here. I know.
Disappointed in that, but at least if we have a Mandalorian, we'll be halfway there.
I skipped some good stuff. I agree. I'm thoroughly enjoying the Mandalorian. I don't know why they're drip feeding us. Why can't they do the Netflix way, where they just give us the whole season?
It's Disney. It's all about the balance.
That's right.
Subscribers. That's how it works.
Yeah.
It's the monthly recurring revenue. They figured out the MSP model.
Yep.
Well, fantastic. And any final thoughts on the evolving threat landscape you'd like to share? I mean, I could talk for another hour with you, but
sure.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate everybody joining and everybody listening in. And if you want to learn more, please, by all means, go to webroot.com. We have plenty of blogs, news rundowns, everything going on in the industry. It's always changing. Definitely check out our nastiest malware, also our COVID clicks, where we have tons of information, where we find America's the worst offender on using your personal devices to do work tasks, tons of risks there, things you want to avoid, things like that.
Excellent. On behalf of IOTA, I'd like to thank Tyler Moffitt of Webroot for joining us today, as well as all of you for following the Secure Connections podcast. Be sure to stop back next week for a new episode on iota.com and check out all the great channel cybersecurity resources while you're on the website. Have a safe and secure day, and thanks again for joining us.